Hi everyone, my name is Katie Ehlers, and today I'll be discussing the legality of colleges banning or restricting the use of social media from their student athletes. And I will be analyzing how the First Amendment plays into this. So over the past decade, social media has grown tremendously, and social media allows messages to be seen and shared by millions of people within a matter of seconds. And with this comes opportunities and threats to college universities as well as specific teams. And so as a result, colleges have decided to restrict or ban the use of social media to their student athletes. However, this does raise concerns about how First Amendment rights plays into this, and it has sparked debate about how student athletes' freedom of expression might be infringed upon. So to begin this analysis, it is important to note what speech rights student athletes have as members of a public university. So in the past, previous case law has suggested that student athletes give up a fraction of their rights when they become students of the university and play for an athletic team. This precedent was set by Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community School District in 1968, and through this, the Supreme Court sided with the students, and they adopted the substantial disruption or material interference clause, which means that as long as students don't interfere or disrupt the classroom, the school, or the school district, then what they say or what they express is okay. But this leaves ambiguity open for what is considered disruptive within a classroom. And there's still debate about how social media plays into this clause and how much of a direct disruption students' expression has on the institution based on what their messages are. So for example, how much of an effect does one tweet from a student athlete have on the greater institution as a whole? So there's still much ambiguity, like I said, in the role that social media plays in the freedom of expression when you are a student athlete for a public university. However, this recent debate has triggered the National Labor Relations Act to possibly grant student athletes with the status of an employee of the university, meaning that they would have rights different than those of a non-student athlete. So this would also mean that students would receive a higher level of protection against the regulation of social media use. So there's also a question about whether a student athlete's messages can be restricted if the message does not specifically reference the team or the organization. So for an example, if an athlete tweets a controversial message and it does not mention the team or the organization, is this still reflective of the team? Howard Wasserman, a law professor at Florida International University who specializes in sports law, suggests that it is not reasonable for college administrators to believe that everything a student athlete does is reflective of the institution. So offensive speech is not protected under the First Amendment. However, there is a gray area about what is considered offensive speech for athletes. So he goes on to say that when you're applying First Amendment principles, a prohibition on offensive speech is never going to go anywhere because the notion of offensive or similar language is always going to be what the school happens to think is offensive. So he's saying that as of right now, college students are at the mercy of the college, and whatever they think is considered offensive is what will be decided in court. So since there is this fine line about how much power a university has when it comes to restricting their student athletes' rights, some schools choose to avoid banning altogether and choose to instead monitor what their players are saying on the internet. So the University of North Carolina designates at least one coach or administrator to be responsible for monitoring their players' social media accounts. And the policy states that any violation of the law or NCAA rules will be subject to an investigation and possibly an immediate sanction and possibly a non-renewal or reduction of the athletics grant and aid. So this policy is just vague enough so that it does not violate the student's First Amendment rights, and it still allows players to use their social media as long as they are using them appropriately in a way that does not violate UNC's rules and regulations. And by doing this, UNC avoids restriction but issues punishment for messages that they think might hurt their relationship, their reputation, or relationship with their stakeholders. So it's still kind of vague, and there's not really a clear-cut decision about what might break these rules. So instead of having an in-house staff person monitor their student athletes' messages on the internet, several athletic departments have turned to a third-party organization to help monitor what their players put on the internet. So Fieldhouse Media is an example of an organization that has worked with over 100 athletic programs, and their goal is just to equip student athletes and coaches and teams with the right tools in order to positively increase their good messaging on the digital world. So they host on-site workshops with the teams to strengthen their knowledge on social media and how to use it productively and positively. And they also track inappropriate tweets from student athletes, and they separate them into categories and then show them to the athletes. And athletes have found that this is actually beneficial and shows them specifically what they can and cannot say on the internet. So another company that does this is Varsity Monitor, and some schools are paying around $10,000 a year to have these types of programs implemented into their athletic departments. And then on the other end, other athletic administrators and coaches believe that their organization should embrace the use of social media using their team members and by using their team members and their athletes to their advantage, they are benefiting the overall success of the higher institution. So Jason Hajudu is the athletic director for media relations at the University of North Dakota State, and he thinks that if we can educate the students on proper usage, it can be a major help as a tool for their personal brand and definitely helps the University of North Dakota athletics brand. So they believe that by using social media as a marketing tool to interact with fans on a personal level, this can increase their team's brand awareness and they can reach a larger audience. They also say that having a personality and putting a face to a number can help fans connect better with their players and in turn give them more or a greater fan base. And then to avoid controversy over First Amendment rights, recent research suggests that there are several ways to successfully train college athletes on the appropriate ways to use social media while they are part of the institution. So, one of the biggest ways is to instruct student athletes on both the positive and negative consequences of their statements online. The communication privacy and management theory shows that students, athletes feel tension when their own personal social media accounts are limited. So research claims that this tension is elevated through an understanding between student athletes and the athletic department that includes showing student athletes positive ways to use social media to build their personal brand and the brand of the university. So social media has created a fast-paced and continuously changing environment in the world of athletics. So universities and athletic departments and specific teams must decide how to manage their social media without disrupting their student athletes' First Amendment rights. The legality of restricting social media use is still being debated. However, training players to use social media the right way on their own may be the best way to prevent controversy and may help improve the brand image of an athletic department.